One of the greatest seasons in the history of the American Conference is in the books as Tulane wins the American Conference Championship in 2025, taking down the North Texas Mean Green. Welcome into a postseason edition of All-American here from Studio A. I'm Kyle Youmans with Maria Trivelpiece on remote as she gets ready for the Army-Navy matchup, which we'll preview over the course of the show as well. But Maria, plenty to catch up on. We've only been off for a week now. However, there's so much that happens over the course of a week, including just one game to decide it all in what has been an incredible season of American Conference football. And as you can see here, I'm even sporting the shirt that my wife got me in order to celebrate the fantastic championship game that we saw down there at Yulman Stadium in New Orleans. You were there. You were on site. 34-21, Tulane ends up as champion.
Well, we've talked about chaos all season long, Kyle, and I think standing there in New Orleans, it just summed up the entire season because it was pure chaos from the moment that game started. But I think it speaks to how competitive this conference has been all season long. And man, I can't wait to break it down because you have your watching eyes from at home. I had my watching eyes on the ground. So lots of different perspectives in this game. Yeah,
I wish I could have made it down there. I was really excited about that matchup, but you did a phenomenal job on the pregame show, I should say. You and Leger and Rini all did a phenomenal job. It was so much fun and so insightful going into the matchup. And then, of course, on ABC in front of the entire football world, 2.4 million viewers, peaked at 2.9. ESPN released those numbers earlier this week as well. Everyone was watching the American Conference Championship game, and it became a topic of conversation. But let's start by congratulating Tulane and the Green Wave. Of course, they were the favorites out of the regular season, were the top seed, were the host, and they took care of business to take it really down to the nitty-gritty of how they controlled that football game. Maria, let's start it. Win their second title in the last 4 years and very deserving from the Green Wave.
Well, I think the thing that is so impressive about Tulane as a football program, Kyle, is that they continue their dominance, whether they have Willie Fritz as the head coach, whether it's John Summerall. They just have success down in New Orleans. As you mentioned, their second title in 4 years. They've been to the championship game the last 4 seasons, and they played like it on Friday night.
And that's the thing that surprised me the most was how they controlled this football game, because even in our preview last week, we still had the anticipation that North Texas would control possession. They would control the offensive side of the ball, and it looked like that through the first drive. They charged down the field, were commanding on that opening drive, 15 plays, 75 yards, scored a touchdown, but then it was an immediate response, 16 plays, 81 yards, and 7 minutes and 57 seconds of time where Tulane drives down and scores a touchdown. And I think that was really the answer that Tulane and Coach John Summerall were looking for, because it's happened so many times this year where North Texas and their quick strike ability on offense either strikes on the opening drive or they strike on their second or third drive of the day, and they go down the field and respond one after the other, and then all of a sudden the team looks up and they're down 21-7 or 24-7 or whatever it may be. Instead, it was Tulane that said, no, you're going to put together a 15-play drive. We're going to respond in our own right. And then from that point, it was nothing but key plays and turnovers. North Texas just put too many opportunities in front of the Green Wave offensively. Jake Retzloff and company, give them credit. They just took care of business on those plays. And we'll talk about some of the controversial calls here in a little bit and what I think about it from just watching that game from afar. But Maria, I know the response in that second drive is what stood out to me and what kept the crowd in it, because if not, I think North Texas had some early momentum that they could have capitalized on.
Well, response is the key word there, Kyle, right? Like, I remember watching that first drive from North Texas, and my first thought was, man, I just hope this is a good game. Like, I don't want it to be a blowout. The American gets this big debut on national television on ABC in prime time, and North Texas went down there, and it looked like it was going to be what we've seen from them all season long, that high-flying offense that just punishes teams. And I think the turning point for me in that whole game was the way that Tulane responded, because it could have got out of hand really quickly. And I think the thing with North Texas and their offense is the way that they snowball on teams. And I think give credit to Tulane, because we've seen them at earlier points in the season where maybe things have gotten out of hand, or they haven't made those key plays or done the little things right, and they needed to be perfect against a really good North Texas offense. And so that's what they did. And you mentioned some of the turnovers that the Green Wave defense forced, and I think that's where it really started with Tulane, was not only the response from them after North Texas scored, but it was also the way that the defense just made such an impact and made North Texas create mistakes.
Yeah, you look at the 4 for 12 on third down, and I believe 2 of those conversions came on the opening drive for North Texas. So really they were held to 2 for 10 on third down for the majority of the football game. I know they converted twice on fourth down on that opening drive because Eric Morris wanted to set the tone. He wanted to go down the field and put up points, and they certainly did that. But when you turn the football over 5 times, 2 fumbles lost, including the one where Caleb Hawkins, the superstar freshman of the year, the all-around tailback that has NFL written all over him, got hurt. That was the first real instance of Tulane saying we're taking control of this football game because of our physicality and because of our relentless pressure on the defensive side. We talked last week, Maria, what did I talk about whenever it came to Tulane and what they did well that was going to challenge North Texas? It was the linebackers blitzing. And we saw that multiple times. Drew Mestemaker did not know where the pressure was coming from. He would look around, and as he thought it was coming left, it was working to his right. He was having to maneuver out of the pocket, and he couldn't get away. That's where the sacks started to breed opportunities for the secondary, for guys like what Tulane has on the second half of that roster. Hopper had 2 sacks in the game for Tulane. It ultimately ended up being the perfect storm from a game plan standpoint by the Green Wave. And I give a lot of credit for what they did in that football game. They took charge, and they made sure that that game was the game plan was going to play out the way that they exactly planned it.
Well, I think that's one thing Drew Mestemaker has done so well all season long, Kyle, is just being calm, being patient. And that's what Tulane, as you mentioned, forced him to not be in that football game. They took it away completely. And I think that was such a difference maker, because one thing, standing there and watching that game, North Texas comes down and scores. And as I said, I was like, oh no, is this going to be a blowout? Are they going to put up another 50-plus point performance? And after that moment, though, it just seemed like Tulane, you know what, the hardest thing, especially on the pregame show, the Green Wave and the Mean Green. Yep. I'm surprised I didn't mess it up. So if I mess it up here, I'm asking for forgiveness. Sure. But I think the pressure that Tulane created just caused so much chaos. And I think that North Texas could never really get in a rhythm. Mestemaker couldn't get in a rhythm. No. And that's why you saw the turnovers. And that's why you saw them just trailing that entire game and making mistakes that we haven't seen them really make since that South Florida game.
Yeah, that's the big thing for me, that when you look at really how it unraveled so quickly for North Texas, they didn't know how to respond, and North Texas fought their way back in the second half as well. We started to see glimpses of what they could do as an offense in the second half, and they had a shot to win it even down the stretch, but there were 2 crucial in zone, not even red zone turnovers, which we've talked about with Tulane throughout the season. Red zone turnovers are one thing. Turning it over in the end zone twice was big. One of them was at the end of the game when North Texas was trying to cut it to a single possession, and Drew Mestemaker's just trying to force it at that point. It's kind of a desperation play. Interception in the end zone, it's over. That was the capper for Tulane. The one before that was Wyatt Young in the end zone dropping a pass. Second time in the game, he drops a pass, and it goes up in the air, and it's intercepted by Tulane. Right place, right time by the Green Wave. But if Wyatt Young holds on to both of those footballs, that takes away 2 turnovers in the course of the game. And even the second one, it was a bad throw from Mestemaker. I'm not putting all the blame on Wyatt Young, but opportunities left off the table. I kind of want to shift a conversation here just a little bit because of how this game unwinded. There was a lot of conversation on social media about 2 calls in particular that happened in the game. The first one happened in the second quarter when it was already 17-7 on a punt. Tulane was punting the football away. Landon Sides was back inside the North Texas 10-yard line, ready to reel in the punt. And instead of the ball going to Sides gets kind of pushed out of the play. The ball hits a North Texas special teams player. It's recovered by Tulane. They take over and immediately score just a couple plays later, just from 13 yards out. They recovered it and can't advance the ball on a muffed punt. So they take over. They score within the next 6 plays, 7 points on the board there. I'll come back to that after talking about the second play. The second play was early in the third quarter after the pick six, what ended up happening as a pick six. Drew Mestemaker goes in and forces a fumble seemingly right at the goal line. They go back and review it. If the ball falls out of the back of the end zone for a touchback, they call it, upon review, a touchdown, saying that he did cross the line, and that was indeed a touchdown. So those two calls seemingly spotting Tulane 14 points. I want to debunk one of those. The punt interference, the kick-catch interference, no call, because Landon Sides got ran into by a Tulane player. That Tulane player was pushed. If you go back and you look at it, you cannot push a guy as the receiving team, a guy from the kicking team, into your own player and then expect a penalty flag for kick-catch interference. So take those 7 points off the board as the 14 that were spotted to Tulane, who ended up winning by 13 points. So I want to just debunk that entirely. I think that was a fine call, and it's just unfortunate for North Texas because the guy who pushed the Tulane defender into Landon Sides is actually the one that made contact with the football that was muffed and then recovered by Tulane. Does that all make sense, Maria? I'm trying to play this through without video ability.
We had a conversation before we even got on this call, before we even went on air.
Yeah.
But I think that makes sense, and I'm comprehending. So continue with your next explanation.
Continuing.
We're all on the same page here.
I respect the call on the touchback versus touchdown argument, because they had video review. They went back and looked at it. It was a touchdown on the field, initially the call, right? So in order to overturn that, you have to have indisputable video evidence. I believe, as a football fan, take my allegiances out of this. As a football fan, I believe I saw enough for that ball to be forced to fumble, and it was out of the end zone for a touchback. The officials and then the group of review officials, replay officials that were also looking at it, did not feel that strongly about it. So even if you wanted to argue that as 7 points, even if you wanted to argue that as a touchdown, I see it either way, and I think either one of those would have been fine. Personally, if you would have given me the microphone and given me the final decision, which nobody intends to do anytime soon, then I probably would have said it's a touchback and it's a fumble force, because I thought the ball had popped out prior to the goal line, and all it's got to do is hover over a sliver of the goal line, a blade of grass, and that's, I think, ultimately why they decided to keep the call as what was on the field. So despite all the debate, the disputes, the arguments on Twitter and the arguments on social media about those two calls, I think one of them was right. I disagree with the other one, but nobody asked me for my opinion in terms of what was happening. The reason North Texas lost this game was not because of the officiating. It was because Tulane controlled the game plan. They controlled the game. And even when North Texas pushed and pushed and pushed in the second half to make that a football game, Tulane did not let it happen. And they capitalized on all the opportunities early. They closed the door late. That's what good football teams do. And that's why Tulane and the Green Wave are the champions of the American Conference.
Well, I think you summed that up perfectly, because there was so much conversation, especially on social media, which could be a good thing in terms of, hey, there's a lot of people tuning into this game. Like that's how I look at it. Let's always be optimistic.
I don't know if I'm there on that one, but
there's a lot
I
of
want it to be
watching.
better conversation, but there were a lot of people watching.
Listen,
that's always
I think the other problem is, like, there's been so much other conversation on social media that we're going to talk about next week in regards to, like, the CFP and different things like that, that I think I was just sick of looking at all of the mean, angry comments on social media. So, but to your point about Tulane and what they were able to do in this game, we talked about their defense, their offense as well, just did the little things. And what did we talk about all season long is the fact that Tulane was winning games barely at points because they weren't doing the little things.
Yes.
I think you saw in this game, they took care of those minor details. They played really good defense to force turnovers. In addition to that, they capitalized on North Texas's mistakes. Yeah. I think coming into this game, we both knew that the team that made the least amount of mistakes and played their best brand of football and capitalized on the opponent's downfalls was the team that was going to win. I think if you play this game multiple times, it might be 50-50 who wins. Like, if they play 10 times, they might each win 5.
Yeah.
But in this instance, Tulane was the team that executed. Tulane was the team that made the least amount of mistakes, and North Texas didn't do the little things that they needed to do to give them a chance to beat the Green Wave.
I completely agree with you, and we've had these conversations on this show before, to where Tulane just wasn't the right football team at that point in time to overcome some of those mistakes and to avoid them entirely in certain situations. And we saw that at different times in the season. However, over the last month of the regular season, I think this Tulane team is different than what we saw at the beginning of the season. And that's going to be put to the test in the college football playoff as Tulane moves on to take on the number 6 seed Ole Miss Rebels, the second time they will have faced Ole Miss this season. And despite some of the tongue-in-cheek from Reese Davis on the college football playoff announcement earlier in the week, the excitement was still there from the Green Wave, and deservedly so. They are the 11 seed. They were the 4th highest ranked conference champion in the group of 12 teams this season. So really excited to see what the Green Wave have. And you and I talked about that game initially back when it happened early in the campaign, even as a reset. We didn't feel like Tulane played their brand of football in that game against Ole Miss. Now they'll have an opportunity to do it against a team that's still trying to figure out what they're doing moving forward after losing Lane Kiffin as a head coach.
I can't wait to break this down even more in depth next week, Kyle. So that's the little plug. Tune in next week because we have a lot to say about what's going on surrounding the college football playoff, in addition to what we think this matchup's going to be. But 3 things for me. The first one is this is a completely different team, as you said, than that team that played back, what was it, I think week 4 maybe when we saw them.
Yeah.
And so that's my number 1 point. Jake Retzloff actually can have more games underneath his belt. We talked to him before that matchup, and he was still learning the playbook because he came in so late. Here's another thing, too. It is very difficult to beat a team twice. We've talked about this on this show, and you made fun of me when I said, oh, I liked when we would drop at like maybe 1 game in a series in college softball. I know you're still going to disagree with me, but I'm just going to say it's really hard just in terms of softball, sweep a team in a regular season, and then you have to play them in the postseason as well. So now Ole Miss has to beat Tulane again, and then as the third thing, as you mentioned, Ole Miss has some uncertainty surrounding, not uncertainty, but they just lost their head coach. Tulane gets to keep their head coach. And so I think that there's a lot of factors that go into this one, and I am so excited about it, just for those reasons and many more. But I'm just saying it's really hard to beat a team twice, and I'm gonna die on that hill for sure.
I'm also going to go out on a limb here. I agree with all the points you just gave. I think Jake Retzloff is about to have his best game as a collegiate quarterback in this matchup, because if I know anything about Retzloff, is that when, one, the bright lights are on, he plays at his best. When he has the confidence level that he has right now and what he's been playing with recently, he plays at his best. And when he's got a little bit of anger, he's a little bit upset, and he wants that revenge, he plays better. So I think Jake Retzloff is primed for a great game. I'm excited to break it down next week. But before we get into all of that, we've got one more game before we get to the postseason and the college football playoff. How about this? It's the Army-Navy game, the 126th edition, as both teams celebrate 125 years of playing previously, 250 years of being, of course, a part of the United States Armed Forces. This is going to be an incredible matchup from M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore this week. I'm excited that you get to be there, Maria, and I cannot tell you how jealous I am that you do and I don't get to be there.
Listen, we have to get you to one of these Army-Navy matchups because last year was my first time, Kyle, and I have been to a lot of football games. I've been to a lot of sporting events.
Yes.
But there's something just different about the Army-Navy game that I can't really even put into words, and I think you hear everybody saying that until you actually get to experience it. And I think the coolest thing about this matchup is we're going to break it down for you right here. We're going to talk about what we think will happen, what each team has to do, but you can have a 1-win Army team versus an undefeated Navy team or vice versa, and it does not matter because what these young men are playing for is just so much greater. And the rivalry and the anger, but also the respect that both of these teams have for each other is incredible. So you never really know what's going to happen. I'm going to be completely honest. Last year going into that game, I was like, the American champion, Army, Bryson Daly, they're going to beat Navy. No question. There are a couple guys banged up on that midshipman roster. And Navy said, no, we have some unfinished business to take care of. Blake Horvath was incredible.
Yep.
The defense was really good. And so I am so excited for this year because even though Army's 6-5 coming into this year and you have Navy 9-2, the records don't mean anything. It's what happens on Saturday.
And can I add to that point? Last year, going into that matchup with everything you just said, coming off of an American Conference championship and what Bryson Daly did last year for Army, they were 6.5-point favorites going into that matchup last year. And, of course, Navy wins it 31-13. This year, after Navy ties with North Texas and Tulane atop the American Conference standings with just one loss in conference play throughout the regular season, they go into that game with Blake Horvath, Eli Heidenreich, Alex Teska, all these weapons that we've been so excited to talk about throughout the year. You want to know what the line is going into this game?
Let me hear it.
The exact same. 6.5-point favorites for the Navy midshipmen. Maybe a warning shot for Navy. Do not take this game lightly. It's the first time that these two teams have met in Baltimore since 2016. In that game, Army won 21-17, and it snapped Navy's 14-game winning streak over the Black Knights, which was the longest that they've had in series history. So, with all that being said, there might be a little bit of magic and revenge on the mind for Army and the Black Knights. But we got to start with Navy and what they've done throughout the season. One of the best offenses in college football. Of course, they're set to play in the Liberty Bowl against the Cincinnati Bearcats in Memphis later in bowl season. But you know this one is on the docket, trying to win the Commander-in-Chief trophy in back-to-back years for the first time since 2012 and 2013, Maria.
Well, Navy has been so exciting to watch all season long, and we've talked about them ad nauseum. And as you said, Kylo, they finished in that three-way, one-loss team at the top of the American. They're just one head-to-head matchup pretty much away from making that conference championship game. And so I think I've just been so impressed with the way the offense, as you said, has performed all season long. And it's that added element of the pass game that they haven't had in years past that, you know, they had it last year, but just Blake Horvath has learned it even more so the longer that he's been in the system. But I think for me, the biggest thing with Navy has been how the defense has improved throughout the season. When we talked to, I did one of their games, it was really early on against Tulsa. I don't even know what week it was at this point, but I just remember that was the key for Brian Newberry and his staff, was that it was a really young defense that he wasn't sure if they were there yet.
Yeah.
You've seen them just progress and get better as the season has gone on, especially Landon Robinson leading the charge, the Defensive Player of the Year in the American. And so that's the thing for me that has really impressed me with how this Navy team has gotten better as the season has progressed.
Yeah, I really do think we have dropped the ball, at least I've dropped the ball in talking about what Landon Robinson has done this year from a Navy midshipman defensive side of the ball. I mean, he's been absolutely insane. 6.5 sacks, 45 sack yards, what they've done throughout the season. I mean, look at all these guys in terms of tackles. They fly to the football. Navy does everything well on that side of the ball, and I'm excited to see where they're continuing in that regard, because remember, they held Memphis to 17 points on Thanksgiving the last time they took the field. That's the first time Memphis has been held under 20 points in the 52 straight games, which was the longest streak in the nation. 28-17, the final score in that road win. You talk about this Navy team that has started the year 4 of 5 games at home in Annapolis, where you've got your home crowd around you. They've been on the road. They've been road warriors since then, and they still look the same. And what do we always say about defense? Defense travels, and they've already shown that they can travel that defense, still winning those road games. I believe down the stretch they were playing 5 of their final 6 games away from home, including this one in Baltimore. So with all that being said, I really do like what Navy brings on the defensive side of the ball, and that doesn't even mention their high-powered offense that we've talked about all year long.
I don't even know what I have left to say about the offense at this point because Blake Horvath, he's just different, right? He can run, he can throw. It's a different type of Navy offense. And then his Eli Heidenreich, Alex Teska, what they're able to do, and then just it's like a three-headed monster.
Yeah.
And it's funny because leading up to the American Conference Championship game, I sat down with Ethan Wazlowski of North Texas, and he was like, man, I'd play anybody else but Navy ever again. He said, even though we beat them, it is just the hardest offense to prepare for, because the way that they show, you don't know what they're going to do. And he's trying to just get his guys in the right position, and it makes it so difficult to play against this Navy offense. And that's coming from a team that beat them, Kyle. So I think that really speaks to just the quality of what the midshipmen can do when they have the football.
Well, and also not to mention, it's not just these three guys that have had success this year. Braxton Woodson at quarterback has been fantastic when filling in for Blake Horvath. Brandon Chapman has been really good. He's had over 400 yards rushing this season and 3 touchdowns himself. I mean, it's a well-oiled machine on the offensive side of the ball, and it continues to put up big numbers. But also, what does that tell you, Maria? Let me test the football IQ that we've just continued to build over these last couple years. What does that tell you if wide receivers are having success, running backs are having success, multiple quarterbacks are having success running the football and being productive on offense? That means who is doing a great job?
Drew Cronick is doing a great job.
Okay, I agree with you there, but that's not what I'm leaning toward.
Okay, okay, so you're leaning like player-wise, who's doing a great job?
Let's
the
say
offensive line's doing a great job.
Let's go, Maria! Come on!
Let's go, I'm learning.
The offensive line, 3rd in the country for fewest sacks allowed. So, yeah, that's probably fair. They don't throw the football a whole lot, right, Maria? They don't throw the football a lot. They're Navy.
No, never, right?
That's because they run the football like crazy. So there should be a ton of tackles for loss, right? Wrong. They have given up just 3.1 tackles for loss per game, despite running the football 75% of the time, which is second best in the country behind only Texas A&M, who, of course, runs the spread and does everything they do with Reed at quarterback and for the fewest allowed in the country. So just because they are running the ball doesn't mean they're getting stopped behind the line of scrimmage. That tells me your offensive line is doing their job. Of course, they were on the midseason watch list for the Joe Moore Award, which is given to the nation's best offensive line, and I think they should be finalists for that. I don't know who ended up being winning or whatever that is here in award season, but I think Navy needs more credit for the big hog mileys up front, paving the way, doing their job, and blocking for all those weapons that we just talked about on the offense.
Mic drop. I agree with you 100%, because we always talk about the three-headed monster and the people that are scoring the touchdowns. We don't give the offensive line enough credit, and we should. And I feel bad that we haven't all season long. So here's your flowers, Navy offensive line.
And you also,
to you and what you've done this season.
I also want to give a little bit of flowers, speaking of giving flowers, to the all-conference postseason award teams and the guys that are being represented on both Army and Navy in that fact. You already mentioned Defensive Player of the Year in Landon Robinson from Navy, but how about Deep Snapper of the Year? How sick of an award is that? The Deep Snapper of the Year is Rain Fry, which also great name for a deep snapper.
I was like, that's phenomenal. I had to make sure that it was actually pronounced Rain, too, because I was like, that is such a sick first name.
Rain.
I love it.
They're both on the first team, all-conference second-team honorees. Ben Purvis, offensive guard. What a year he's had on that front line for Navy. Alex Teska, of course. Eli Heidenreich, of course. I should say his name right if he's going to be an all-conference honoree. Blake Horvath makes it third team. Mark Anthony Parker, the linebacker who just flies all over the field, one of the leaders on that defense, made it to the third team as well. So plenty of flowers to hand out there for Navy across the board. Excited to see what they have in the midshipmen this week. But I'm also excited to see what this Army Black Knights team has in store, Maria. Tell me about it. Army getting it done against UTSA. We thought it was dark magic from the Alamo Dome, but apparently if you're a part of the service academies, you're immune to all that.
I am just still in shock that UTSA lost in the Alamo Dome. But if you go back and look at the history, Army 4-0 when they play UTSA on the road. So listen, that is just the defiance of the dark magic, I think. I don't know.
Yeah,
they must
sure.
wear some protective shields that we don't know about. So kudos to Army, but I think the bigger kudos to Army goes to the way that they've been performing in this latter half of the season, Kyle. They've won 3 of their last 4 games. They needed to win that game against UTSA to make the bowl game. So when the pressure has been on for the Black Knights, they've been able to do everything that they needed to do to not only set themselves up for this Army-Navy game, but also qualify for a bowl game.
Yeah, and if we remember some of these matchups early in the year, we just took a look at some of those highlights against North Texas. They pushed that North Texas team that ultimately were runners-up in the American Conference to overtime up at West Point, up at Mikey Stadium. Of course, Army set to play UConn in the Fenway Bowl in Boston. What a scene that's going to be on December 27th from the home of the Boston Red Sox. Sixth time that both of these programs come into the game already achieving bowl bids. So thank goodness Army did win against UTSA, so that way they do have the right to play in a bowl game for the second straight year, because they did it also in 2024, both teams being under that bowl bid as well. But when you talk about what this team has in front of them, we talked about Navy. Yes, they've got a chance to go to a great bowl game and play a team out of the Big 12. Army has their biggest test in front of them over the last few weeks. A win Saturday would give Army its first victory over an AP-ranked Navy team since 1955, Maria. So in this game, 1955 was the last time that they beat an AP-ranked Navy squad. Navy currently in the number 22 spot. So there are opportunities abundant for both of these teams, but for Army, you got just a little bit of sprinkle of a little extra motivation to try and pay those guys back for what they did to you last year as 6.5-point underdogs, now that you are a 6.5-point underdog taking on the midshipmen.
Well, I think that's my favorite, not my favorite part of this game, but one of my favorite things about this rivalry is, as we said, starting off this segment, it doesn't really matter what the records are, but when you're the underdog, quote unquote, and in this case, I'm only calling Army the underdog based on records, based on what we've been talking about, based on that Navy
and
is
spread.
Ranked in the AP poll.
Yeah.
They're the underdogs in this game. I just think that, again, this is back to my funny logic when I talk about, like, it's hard to beat a team twice. This is my other weird sports logic. It's almost like better being that underdog because, like, you're not expected to beat Navy in this game, right? So does that give you a little bit extra oomph? Like,
you're playing
I
with
think
house
it
money.
does. Yeah, it's funny. Going back to something, I believe it was Blake Harrell of East Carolina saying last year when he was the interim coach, he felt like he was playing it with house money so he could be a bit more aggressive with his play calling. I think that might be the same instance for Army. They're playing with house money. Like, Navy's supposed to beat them in this game. So what do they have to lose? They can go out there and play a bit more free.
That is, I'm going to start calling these the Marialysis. It's just like the Maria analysis, and that also just sounds like a bad prescription drug. But whatever it ends up being, I'm still going to say it's your logic, and I agree with your logic on this one a little bit more than what I did on the previous one. However,
I just want to interject here. I know that it sounds absurd, and it's not actually real logic, but it's like the athlete logic in me. Like, you have to trick your brain when you're an athlete to make yourself play the best that you can. So you have to, like, if you're Navy in this game, you're thinking like, man, like we're ranked higher, like we have to be better. If you are the team that like needs to beat somebody more than once, you're like, man, we already did this, like we can do it again. It's how you trick your brain. So I don't know if it's Maria analysis or whatever you just said. I think it's like crazy athlete who needs to like tell their brain the right thing to get them to perform well analysis.
All right. I'm just gonna. You talk about mic drop. I'm just gonna leave it.
You're like, I have no response to that. And that's fine.
I don't. I was not a student athlete at the same level that you were, so I'm just gonna defer to you on this one and make sure that you know. I get what you're trying to say. I really do. And I agree with you on what you're trying to say. Let me just put it that way. You know what else is fun? When you talk about decisions and analysis and all the different weird stuff that you've got to do to trick your mind into making the right decision, Army made the right decision in solidifying their quarterback circle and what was just continuing to be a question mark for Army. Cale Helms has done a nice job since really becoming the full-time starter as a part of the Black Knights offense. They won 3 of their last 4 games to reach that bowl game, to reach bowl eligibility. Is it a coincidence that they won 3 of their last 4 when they settled the QB battle, Maria? Probably not. It was not a coincidence. Helms, who has done a great job replacing what Bryson Daly did last year, over 1,000 yards rushing, 15 touchdowns on the ground. Of course, he's averaging 8.2 points per game himself, which is top 25 in the country in that regard. And those 15 total touchdowns are top 10 in the FBS when it comes to the rushing score. So I really do like what he's done this year, Maria, and he's gotten better as the season has gone on.
I think he just needed more game reps. And I think it's hard when you have somebody like Bryson Daly a season ago to get anybody in behind him, because Daly was just so dominant, and he's a big reason why Army won so many games and had the success that they did last year. And so I think in terms of somebody like Kyle Youmans, like, it's not that the ability wasn't there, it's just you haven't played in game scenarios yet. And I think once they finally decided, okay, this is who we're going with, then not only can Youmans have the confidence that, all right, I'm the guy, I am the one that's going to lead this team, also the rest of his teammates can buy into, like, all right, this is the quarterback that's going to lead us to success. And then you have that continuity. And I think that that has been the difference for me in this latter half of the season for Army, is that they kind of figured out who were going to be not just the guy and also be guys around him. And so I think when you have a leadership academy, right, when you have every young man on that roster is going to lead in some way, who's going to be the leaders of the leader of the leaders, and how are they going to buy into it? And Kyle Youmans has done a good job with that.
Well, that was what made Bryson Daly so special last year, is that he was Captain America. I mean, people rallied around him. Was he the most talented player in the landscape of college football? Probably not. He was very talented, don't get me wrong, and he was a top 10 Heisman vote getter for a reason. Kyle Youmans, he knew that, and we talked about that preseason going into the year, that's not what the expectation should be. The expectation is to find your own niche, find your own role, and I think that's what Youmans has done more and more as the season has gone on. And one thing I will say about him, the grittiness and the toughness that it takes to play that position, he's got both of those things. And some of the hits he took and just popped right back up for, that sends a message every time. He gets flattened on this option where he's going to take hit after hit after hit. And the way he's popping back up and hustling back to the sideline, way he scores, and the way the team rallies around him when he finds the end zone, you can tell there's a lot of love in that building and in that program for Youmans and what he has built over the one season as being the starter for Army. But now this is his toughest test, so he's going to have some help. Noah Short was fantastic in that game against UTSA. You need some help around him. I think that's starting to come, and that's part of why he's getting better.
Well, Noah Short last season was also very good. I think that we didn't talk about him enough this year because Army didn't have the same exact season that they had last year. And I'm so glad that you bring him up, because especially in that UTSA game and the last couple games of the season, when Army's having success, it's not just because of Kyle Youmans, it's because of Noah Short. And the thing about him as well is I've had a chance to talk with him a season ago. It's his confidence and leadership as well. Like, there was Bryson Daly, but Noah Short was kind of like that jokester in the locker room who kind of rallied the guys around everybody else as well. And so I think that when you have somebody who can lead off the field and then is also having success on the field, that really helps you as a program.
No, it certainly does. And you need some Blake Horvath has Heidenreich. It has Teska. He has all these other elements. Kyle Youmans hasn't necessarily looked around and seen a lot of that help, though it's not something that he's pointed out or blamed or had excuses for. He's trying to push those guys along, and Noah Short is a leader in that room, and you can tell that he's helping pull those guys along and helping everybody kind of fit into the mold. Now, I do want to talk about this defense as well, because I've been saying it all year. This is not the same elite-level defense that Army had in 2024, and it's not. It certainly isn't. But they aren't that far off either. When you really look at some of the numbers that Army has done defensively, they're still extremely disciplined. Number one in the country for fewest penalties and penalty yards allowed per game, only averaging just under 3 penalties a game and under 25 yards per game in the penalty category. That's fantastic. If you're not giving up free yardage, especially in a game and in a system where Army wants to control time of possession like they have, anytime you can get your defense off the field, it's great. And penalties only do anything but extend drives. They also have shown that they're still super physical. Army has given up just 211 first downs on the year. That's top 25 in the FBS in that category as well. Part of that, again, by design, because winning time of possession helps. But that's what we said about that defense last year. Were they the more elite defense where they fly to the football and they force a bunch of turnovers and they do incredible things? Last year they did it at times. This year they haven't necessarily done that, but they've been steady. And that's why they're going to a bowl game, and that's why they have the 6 wins this year, because they don't make a ton of mistakes and they get off the field, which allows that time of possession to kill clock and to do exactly what they've done, and that's keep games close over the course of 4 quarters.
Well, we're going to talk about our keys to this matchup in just a little bit, and that time of possession and the killing of the clock is one of mine. And as you said, it's not that this Army defense is doing anything flashy. It's their steadiness, it's their consistency.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go to a word that you used previously. It's that grit as well, because I think that they just will themselves to stay into games, like even games where it shouldn't be close. They're keeping this Army team in, and but it in the way of that they're able to stay just so clean on defense. And I think that's why they've been able to be successful, especially in these last 3 out of 4 games, because they're able to just do what they've done all season long consistently.
Yeah, talking about some of the front and center guys for that defense. I really love Caleb Fortner. He's one of my favorite players to watch this season. 70 tackles. He has 7 for a loss. He's been great this year. Andon Thomas, I hope I'm saying his first name right there, but he's been great. Thomas has been awesome throughout the year. 96 tackles, and of course they continue to shine on that side of the ball. Again, just like I did with Navy, I want to put a little bit of love on the all-conference honorees for Army. Brady Small, we talked about the offensive line for Navy. How about for Army? He helps lead the way, set the tone at the center position. Thomas, who I just mentioned at linebacker, both Small was a first-team honoree. Thomas was a second-team honoree. You had Jack Bowsam on that second level as well at the defensive line position, third-team all-conference honoree. And then the last one that I have on the list is an honorable mention, Casey Larkin at safety. That dude's a hitter. He comes downhill and he does nothing but just lay down the hammer. He's been fantastic throughout the year. So you'll see him pop up in this game. I think they're going to need him on a couple different occasions against Navy. Now, Maria, let's give some keys. How does each one of these teams end up winning the football game? Give me some key matchups to watch.
All right, I'm going to just start with, I have my keys as a whole, if that makes sense. So I'm going to start with Army. I think my biggest key for Army is what we just talked about, is that time of possession. I think the longer that they can hold on to the football and keep the football out of Blake Horvath's hands, that's going to give them an advantage. Because I think the thing that makes Army so much that makes Navy so difficult to beat is the fact that they can throw the ball in addition to running it. So I think for Army, if they can keep the football, play clean and good defense, it gives them the best opportunity to beat the midshipmen. So that's my first key for Army. I'll let you jump in and then I'll go to Navy.
So, okay, I like that. I think time of possession is a big thing. I think you've got to have a lot of options there whenever it comes to this game. I'd like to go back and look at that stat. I don't know if anybody's done that. The amount of course, we have the all-time record, right, of this game and what it means. I wonder how much that correlates with time of possession. You know because both of these teams value it so much, and they have over the course of their program. So is there one that has had more success than the other in terms of time of possession? I think all of that could possibly play a factor.
Yeah, it's actually we should look that up coming into it. I'm kind of mad that we didn't, because it's the basis of what these two teams do. And every time we talk about these two teams playing other opponents, are like, oh, well, Army did what they always did and dominated time of possession. So in a game where both teams do that, how does that correlate to the score?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm going to go a little bit different. I'm going to go with Navy first, okay? I'm going to start with Navy. All right. And I think part of that is, or would you rather me start with Army? You let me know.
I don't care. You pick.
Okay.
You go. Whatever your heart desires, Kyle, go for it.
Yeah, let me go with Army. Let me go with Army first, because I think it'll be easier to adjust. Army winning on 3rd down and 4th down. They've got to continue to do that. They've done that throughout the year. They've actually been one of the better teams on 3rd down and 4th down throughout the country. Army offensively 13th in the nation when it comes to 4th down efficiency. They convert on 4th down more than 68% of the time. So if Army is going to have some success against Navy, they're going to have to keep their drives alive, continue to push the ball. We've seen some incredible drives throughout the season for Army, speaking back to that time of possession conversation we had a moment ago. Those 18, 19, 20-play drives, that's going to kill the clock enough to keep Navy's offense off the field. That's big for Army. So if you can convert on the money downs, as they like to call it, I think Army's got a really good chance to win this football game. And on the other side, I think I'm going to put some pressure on Navy's defense. Navy defensively has to force turnovers. Army does not turn the football over a whole lot. Only 9 turnovers on the year. That's 9th fewest in the country. So can you give extra possessions to your offense? Whoever's offense is on the field the majority of the time. So it goes back to your time of possession conversation, because I agree with you. But whoever stays on the field offensively, I think, is going to have the majority of the success. Navy will drive down the field quicker. That's just because they're more high-powered. They have more weapons. That's part of who they are and how they're built. Army will do it methodically. They will draw out these drives, continuously stretch the clock. So Navy, as long as they get extra possessions, I think they feel pretty good about how they can win this football game.
You created a perfect transition for me, because my key for the Navy defense was going to be force Army to make mistakes, because they don't, as you just said. So I want to see them put more pressure on the Army offense. And then my key for the Navy offense, I think it's a little bit different, because I was looking at it. I was like, man, the thing with these games and the Commander-in-Chief Trophy games is that, unlike everybody else who has to prepare for Army, Navy, Air Force, or even Rice, when they ran the option, is that Army and Navy are playing against this from the time that they step on campus as freshmen. And so it's not as, let me rephrase this. It's very difficult to play an option team, but they're used to seeing it in practice much more than other opponents. So I want to see Navy throw the ball a little bit more, because I think that that's that wrinkle that Drew Cronick has made this Drew Cronick offense so good. So I want to see Horvath just air it out a little bit more. And he's done that all season long. And adding in those wrinkles, I think the really cool thing that Cronick told us back earlier in the season was the way that he is so intentional about adding in wrinkles for every single opponent. And so I'm interested to see what the wrinkle is, and I want to see Navy just throw the ball a little bit more, because can that keep Army off balance, because they're so used to playing the run and the option within their own practices, unlike other teams that do that when they prepare for Navy.
Well, that's what makes this game so incredible to watch, because it is, for the most part, the two teams that run this style of offense the best in the country, where it is an option. You've got the triple option, you've got the wing tee or sling tee or whatever it ends up being. But Navy is taking a page out of Army's book last year of completions over the middle, long plays in the passing game, yards per reception, that kind of thing, all playing a big factor. And Army's trying to take a page out of the Navy book in continuously drive down the field like Navy would last year as well. So that's what makes this game so unpredictable and so interesting to get into as we go into the Army-Navy matchup. Now, before we give our picks on who's going to win the football game this week, we've got to talk about these uniforms.
Oh, it's my favorite part. Okay, I say everything's my favorite part of this game. I just love this game. It's one of my favorite parts of this game.
Let's take a look at both teams. By the way, let me set it up both ways. Both of these teams celebrating 250 years of the ultimate opportunity to serve and to reflect on your country and on being a part of the armed forces, and the 250th birthday, of course, with the United States of America, and that celebration that continues going into July 4th of this year. So both teams kind of with a similar feel to them whenever it comes to their uniforms. Let's start with Army. Let's talk about the Army Black Knights.
Here in these 13 colonies, we work to build a nation that will endure through the ages. To win our independence, we must create a force strong enough to outmatch any other. A force that is selfless and disciplined, who will bravely fight for our freedom from British rule. A force that will protect the American people and our democracy. I will forge the United States Army.
The Continental Congress appointed George Washington to lead America's army, a force that united the 13 colonies and won a stunning victory against the seasoned British regulars, inspiring hope across the young nation. For 2.5 centuries, over 40 million Americans have worn the Army's uniform. Their selfless service has been and remains permanently intertwined with our nation's history. With some making the ultimate sacrifice to protect their fellow Americans, Marble stands as a symbol of the strength of American democracy and the U.S. Army as its protector. It honors those who served and never returned, and the sacrifices of all who wear the uniform. Through their service and sacrifice, soldiers demonstrate their commitment to the mission and place the welfare of the nation above their own. As General George Patton once said, the highest obligation and privilege of citizenship is that of bearing arms for one's country. On the 250th anniversary of the United States Army, we honor those who have committed their lives to defend our freedom. On December 13th, Army football will do what the United States Army has done since 1775. Fight with everything they have until the final whistle. Go Army, beat Navy.
How about that? You take a look at really the deep meaning behind this Army uniform. You get that purple streaking through the jersey numbers, and of course all of that going back to the sacrifice made by soldiers and Gold Star families, tracing its lineage back to the badge of military merit, the predecessor to the Purple Heart, first of course put together by General George Washington during the American Revolution. I mean, this is history that we're talking about all the way back throughout the entirety of this country, Maria, and it's really cool to see that personified in this football uniform as both teams continue to show out going into this Army-Navy game.
Well, that's the coolest thing, right? Is the way that the attention to detail is just so magnified. It's one thing to pay attention to detail. It's one thing to have really cool visuals, but the meaning behind every single thing that went into each of these uniforms is what I love about the thought process behind them. And I think the little script, just the service words, I believe it's on the helmet, and just the different things that they have included is what makes it so cool, is because there's a story behind all of it. And shout out to the creative teams also for putting together the videos to tell the story. I mean, we're storytellers, Kyle, and I think that you can really appreciate the way that they have this thought out, the way that not only the uniforms represent things, but the story that goes into the uniforms represents so much. And so, man, I in particular love the helmets from Army. The detail on the helmets is what stands out to me the most.
Yeah, they're really a beautiful uniform, beautiful video, beautiful all together. Now, of course, we've seen how these uniforms have come together and the meaning behind them. I do want to give credit. It's the 10th season that Army football and the United States Military Academy's Department of History and War Studies have collaborated on these uniforms with Nike specifically for the Army-Navy game. So credit to them, credit to what they've put together to try and personify the history, but also push it back to the gridiron and what we'll get to see coming up this week. Now, let's take a look at what Navy's bringing to the table on their uniform combo this week.
For over 250 years, the United States Navy has ruled the seas as a relentless force of power and freedom. USS Constitution was the spark that ignited a legacy of dominance that surges across every ocean today. Six frigates forged a nation's strength upon the open sea, and their spirit endures in every sailor who carries their creed. Don't give up the ship.
Wow, how cool is that, Maria?
Woo!
Unbelievable.
I'm a big fan. The helmets on these too, I think those are one of my favorite parts, is the detail on the helmets. Because there's so much. Oh man, like just look at in the coloring of it as well. I know we're gonna have to pick, but I'm gonna have reasoning.
Are we
gonna
have to pick? I don't know if I'm gonna want to pick.
I don't know. I don't really want to pick because
Yeah.
I just think
These are one of the games where you don't have to pick. You can just enjoy because
Okay.
I
All
agree
right,
with
I'm not
you.
picking. I'm abstaining from picking because I think they're both phenomenal.
I like it. And each one of those helmets that you just talked about, 4 hours to hand paint each one of those helmets. You talk about the detail and the design. Honestly, I thought it would probably be more than the 4 hours to hand paint it, but
right.
that's incredible. The left side of the helmet, if you're looking at the helmet straight on from like a face mask standpoint, the left side, the USN is in the monogram copper and outlined in dark navy on the outside of it, which is the same design that's present in the rotunda of Bancroft Hall that ties the Naval Academy back to the 250th anniversary of the Navy. Shout out to the Navy Sports Information Department to have that information readily available. So you talk about details, all of it detailed throughout on both of these uniforms, an incredible look. And of course, it just means a little bit more when you can bring back the history to it, but also with the 250th celebration of the Army and the Navy, and of course, the United States of America. It's really a fun environment, and it's going to be something that I think we'll remember for quite some time whenever we get to finally see these uniforms in person on the field at M&T Bank Stadium coming up this week, Maria.
I keep saying that I love this game. There's so many things that are my favorite parts, but the detail, what it means, the history involved in it. There's always history involved in the uniforms that they put together, right? You talked about how they've worked together with different historical departments to be able to tell these stories. But I think when there is so much meaning behind a game as a whole, there's so much meaning behind both of these institutions. And then they take all of that and then they display it in terms of uniforms, in terms of storytelling, in terms of the young men that step on the field that day. Oh my goodness. I need it to be Saturday already, Kyle. Like
Yes.
I need to get there because I just think, and here's the thing, it's not only just the players on the field, right? Because you have the midshipmen and the cadets coming from their respective institutions and the energy that they bring and the passion that they bring. It's just awesome. I really hope that you get to experience it one day.
One day we'll get out there. But on this day, you can't make a pick, but I get to make a pick. And, of course, last week on the American Conference preview show, I had both helmets represented of each team that was participating in the American Conference title game, both Tulane and North Texas. I've got both helmets here for Navy and Army to pick a winner. You talk about tradition. I mean, just look how closely represented the gold is between the two normal helmets. Of course, they're not going to be wearing these coming up on Saturday, but just look at how much tradition is in each one of these teams, these programs, these individuals. I'm cheering for both teams. That's part of what's special about the Navy-Army game and Army-Navy game, I guess you could say, one way or the other. However, there's only one team that's going to win it. And last year, it was a 6.5-point underdog in the Navy midshipmen that ended up winning that football game, defeating Army, who came in with all sorts of momentum. And now this year, Army gets to return the favor as 6.5-point underdogs to possibly take down Navy. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to take the Navy midshipmen to win it. I think they are not going to lose that final Army-Navy game where Blake Horvath is at quarterback, Eli Heidenreich outside, Alex Teska. All those guys, there's just too much firepower from the midshipmen. Give me Navy to win it, 31-28 on a game-winning field goal at the end of regulation to win it.
I like that you explained exactly how it's going to go down too at the end, and I have to say you had me fooled. I thought you were leading me to Army. I was like, he's going to pick Army. All right, Kyle.
Yeah, that was an ode to the Navy alumnus Lee Corso. Not so fast, my friend. And that's exactly how Navy's going to get it done. Not so fast, but they're going to get it done at the end of the day.
At the end of the game with the field goal. All right, well, we'll see how that plays out come Saturday, and we'll see if Kyle's right. And if not, Kyle, you just have to be prepared for all the Army fans in your DMs.
I would be 0 for 2 as well because I picked North Texas. So
you did pick
accountability.
North Texas.
But
listen. Like I said, the way that game started, I thought it was going the Mean Green's way. But we still have some more stuff to cover here.
What do we got here, Maria? What do we got?
Oh, what do we have? I think it's one of your favorite parts of the show.
It's
right?
top plays, Maria. You start us off. Take us through number one.
All right, you
Or
mean number five?
Yeah, number 5.
All right,
Whatever
well, we're going back to this championship game because there were some fun defensive plays. Let's give some love to that unit. Here comes Sam Howard with the hard hit. The ball pops up. LJ Green's going to pick it up. He doesn't run it back for a touchdown, but he does get a ton of yards for the Green Wave. And I think my favorite part of this right here was just the hard hit from Sam Howard. And we talked about the Tulane defense having an impact in this game. You see it on this play.
I've been extremely impartial in my analysis today. I didn't like this play. As a North Texas fan, I didn't like this play because Caleb Hawkins did not return to the game in full force. He tried to work through it and he came back in the game for a second, but then he never came back in. This play changed the game in my opinion, and this was part of that physicality that Tulane established early and often, and they took care of business from this point forward. So yes, give all the credit in the world to Sam Howard for making the play. That's all he did throughout the season, and he made this play. That was a difference in the ball game. Give credit to Tulane. They get it done. Now, moving back to the hardwood, it's almost fully basketball season, but not quite yet. I've actually seen this Utah State team. They've been pretty good throughout the year, but South Florida just took care of business. How about this? C.J. Brown, get out of my way, young man. I'm taking this to the rim, left hand and all. No chance to slow him down at the Yingling Center. South Florida with a big-time performance over Utah State.
It's just the explosiveness on this as well. Defended, one-handed, left hand. He said, okay, I'm going to show you what this Bulls team is made of this year.
They're going to be a force to be reckoned with.
All right, here's some women's basketball for you. Tulsa and Mississippi Valley State. That's Dora Toman. Look at the behind the back for the layup. She had the steal right before that as well. She was the freshman of the week in the American, Kyle. And man, if she keeps making plays like this, she might be getting some more accolades.
A little no-look behind the back. You see the celebration from the scorer in her own right. She's like, yeah, how about that? All the way through. Great play from Tulsa. I think they're going to be sneaky good. We'll get into basketball season in a couple weeks, but I think they're going to be sneaky good in the American Conference this year. Let's go to Charlotte men's basketball. Let's see what the 49ers have cooking against North Carolina A&T. Desmond Mingo. Oh, my goodness. You've got to be kidding me. Call the and one, too. Call your shot. How about that shot from Mingo? The steal, time winding down. Just a prayer, but the prayer answered. This is beautiful. Textbook.
I couldn't believe it. Somebody sent this to me, and I was like, oh, I think we have to put that in top plays because he gets the ball back, and then he just heaves it at the backboard, time expiring, makes it running off the court. I mean, Charlotte's up by a lot in this game, but Mingo, that's pretty fun to watch.
I hope number one is better than this. This is a pretty big play, Maria. You got pressure on you. What is number one this week?
I know. We'll take a look at number one. I think this is deserving. Tulsa again, but on the men's side. Just wait for it. That's Miles Barnstable. Not one defender, Kyle. Two. Up and over. One-handed slam. I hope that's worthy of number one.
It was definitely worthy.
To hear it. You good with that?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's an incredible play. The ball movement, keeping it in bounds, keeping it off the baseline, and then going right back out to the perimeter. There's a lot of action there at the Reynolds Center this week. How about that? Tulsa men's and women's basketball getting in the fold in terms of top plays. That's nasty work. The elevation, the extension, and then holding on to the basketball all the way down, putting a guy on a poster. Oh, man. That's a big-time play.
That's a lot of good things happening for the Golden Hurricane, and so that's my number one play. I'm glad that you don't totally disagree with me this week.
I don't. Yeah.
That's a win. That's a win for me. I'm really excited about it.
I don't disagree with you that much. You make it seem like I disagree with you all the time. That's not the case.
No. You give me credit where credit's due.
I just want to make sure that when you read the top play, it's going to have something of a little extra oomph to it at the end. And those were two great top plays off the hardwood this week.
We love to see it. Top plays, done and dusted.
By the way, really quick shout out. How about what we saw from North Texas this week in women's basketball?
Yes.
34 points and 31 rebounds. An incredible outing from North Texas and the Women's Player of the Week this week. It was really cool to see what she was able to do on that side of things. And really, North Texas just continues to have some big-time success. It was Megan Nestor, by the way, who did it. 34 points, 31 rebounds against the top 10 team in rebounding this year. So, again, we'll get into basketball when we get into basketball. It's Army-Navy week, but I did want to give a shout-out over the course of the day for Megan Nestor.
It's funny because I did have a couple of her rebounds in here that I was thinking about putting in top plays, and then there were a couple dunks, and I like the behind-the-back pass. So I'm glad we at least got a little shout-out here to Megan Nestor. And we got to talk about her because she's a pretty cool story that we'll want to touch on, especially come basketball. So that's our little plug to make sure you continue to watch All-American. When we're done with football, we got American Conference basketball, men's and women's.
But we have football this week. We'll have football after that because we're going to the College Football Playoff, baby. That's what's happening in the American Conference. Army, Navy this week. Be sure to tune in and watch Maria on the sidelines for everything you need to know going into the Army-Navy game, the 126th edition of the historic game, this time from Baltimore, Maryland. That's going to do it for us here on All-American this week. Maria will be back in studio next week, and we'll break it all down for you, and we'll prepare you for the College Football Playoff as Tulane takes on 6th seed Ole Miss, and then a big-time bowl game slate, too. We'll talk about all those as we get closer and closer. For Maria Trivelpiece, I'm Kyle Youmans. We'll see you next week with more All-American from Studio A.